Welcome to the Nano Entrepreneurship Network podcast, where entrepreneurs who have transitioned ideas into the marketplace share their insights and some of the lessons they have learned as they navigated the technology development pathway. I'm Lisa Friedersdorf, Director of the National Nanotechnology Coordination Office. Today, I'm joined by Ross Dunlap, the CEO and co-founder of Ceres Nanosciences. Ross, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit more about your company and how you got started?
Thanks, Lisa. My pleasure. So to start with a little bit about our company, Ceres, we are a life sciences company. We have an innovative and patented technology. We've branded it as the nanotrap particle, and we customize and manufacture this technology for our customers. Now, our customers are other life sciences companies, including pharmaceuticals, clinical lab testing companies, diagnostic test manufacturers, and research labs in the government and academia. And we have customers all over the world. A bit about our technology. Our customers use these particles to process samples, such as biofluids like blood, urine, and saliva. And the value they bring is they improve accuracy and sensitivity of diagnostic tests, and they enable critical research and development of new life sciences products.
So when you talk about diagnostics or rapid diagnostics and being able to use this nanotrap particle in fluids like that, is that something like a pregnancy test type diagnostic?
Yes, we are a platform technology company. And much like Intel supplies the technology industry and goes into any device and any technology, we are similar. We are the technology that powers diagnostic testing. So we do not provide the end diagnostic tests, but we are a component in many others' diagnostic tests, and we make them work better. And in some cases, we enable tests to work that would not have been possible without using our particle technology.
Can you tell us a little bit about, the very beginnings?
Yeah, so I'm not one of the inventors, and I was introduced to the inventors really through personal connections and I guess serendipity. They were working with a new technology. They had invented it out of necessity for their own research, trying to get at cancer biomarkers to essentially enable earlier and better screening of cancer. And they invented this particle to help them out. And from that, they realized they had something really innovative, really powerful. And they took it a little farther and realized that it was something that they were ready to share with the world, that should be commercialized. We crossed paths because I was, at the time, looking for opportunities to build a company myself, to take a product that could have significant impact and own and be responsible for its success. Before this, I had worked as a management and technology consultant, and I worked with a lot of entrepreneurial technology startups that were bringing disruptive products to the market. And I really enjoyed helping with all aspects of making their businesses successful. But I also had a real desire to be on the other end, to be a founder and driver of something that was really innovative and really impactful.
Can you talk about some of the challenges and opportunities with taking an idea like this from an academic lab and scaling it up into a business?
Yeah, I'd say the primary challenges is start with validation of the technology and the market. The most important thing, especially if you're not the inventor, but you're the entrepreneur who's looking to take this technology to the market, really putting in the time to understand how the technology works. Is it validated with robust data, third-party verification? The inventors are always very excited about what they've created and its innovation, but they're biased. So you have to do a lot of tire kicking. And it's a long process, and you don't always have the resources or time to do full verification. So with that, you also have to have some amount of tolerance for risk, as well as faith and trust in the science that's being presented by the creators. Second, beyond, just does the technology work? Is it validated? It's critical to know, is there a market for it? Just because something is new and cool doesn't mean that there are end users and markets and that it will replace existing technology. So you have to do a really thorough assessment of the market, understanding the problem that a technology is solving? Does that problem exist, and are users looking to solve it? And can your technology replace existing technology and workflows? And is it worth the investment? Will customers invest in making that change to use your technology? So is the value compelling? I think a third challenge is just, can it scale? So if you've determined, does the technology work? Is there a market for it? Can you scale it? Can you produce it in a large volume, high quality, and produce it, essentially for less than what it takes to sell it? So can you profit from it? And I think if you solve those three challenges, then knowing that the opportunity is there and being excited about it, and knowing that it has tremendous potential to do really a lot of good for humanity, especially in the life sciences industry, then those are the factors you have to consider, and what drives ultimately the decision to move forward with the technology out of academia.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience applying for and receiving federal funding and the impact that had on your company?
Yeah, the federal funding has been critical to our success. It has been the fuel that has helped us validate our technology, develop new applications for it, and really kept our company alive and going forward to get to the point we're at today. The federal funding we received has come from a number of sources. A lot of it came from DARPA, from their SBIR programs, and it allowed us to take our platform technology and apply it to applications such as an application to detect viruses, for example, and to do the critical data development that we never would have been able to do on our own, that we didn't have the funds to pursue. Going after the federal funding is obviously, it takes a lot of work and a really good proposal, and good basis for putting your technology forward as innovative and worth funding. And I think, we were fortunate to have all those features in our technology and our team, and we were very successful at getting some key grants along the way that got us to the point where we could then go after some institutional funding. It helped us validate our technology to the point where others were interested to invest, and also to the point where customers felt that our technology was mature enough that it could be baked into their products or into their workflows as well.
So you mentioned going after some institutional funding. So what is your process for identifying and attracting potential investment outside of the government path?
To date, we've raised one round of institutional funding, our Series A round. And the process we went about, it actually unfolded over many years. And it took that long because we had to constantly assess when was the right time to do it. So as a startup company, you're always in the mode of raising funding, and you're always talking to potential investors. And a lot of the process is just figuring out when is the right time based on how much validation you've done, how valuable your company is, and what kind of investment terms you can get. So when you ultimately get to that point where you decide it is the right time for your company to raise that round, the process is then one of finding, first and foremost, a group of investors who get your technology, who get your business model, who can add value to it. Most importantly, the money's important, but it's actually secondary to bringing on board a team that is going to help you be successful. So for us, we're in a bit of a niche space in the life sciences industry when it comes to institutional investors. As a company that's kind of bucketed in the diagnostic space, there aren't a lot of targeted or focused funds that are looking for investments in just diagnostics. We happen to find one of the only venture funds out there that was entirely focused on diagnostics. And that was because of their team's expertise and background and passion and understanding of what diagnostics can do in the space of healthcare. And that was critical for us. And linking up with them as a partner has been a key to our success. And then, of course, all the terms after that and how much money to raise and under what terms is really important. But I think the message is it's the most important part was finding that right fit of investor.
What are some of the decisions that you made that perhaps in retrospect you would do differently?
Right. That's a great question. And there are many. And some of them you try to forget about and move on from. But they're all great lessons learned looking back. I think one of the early decisions that we should have made, and this ties into some of my earlier comments about how do you take a technology out of academia and into the market, I really think we should have done a lot more validation of the technology as well as development of even a small amount of scale, outside of the benchtop manufacture of these particles to take it to the next level before we started developing plans to talk to potential customers. Because what we found was, with many conversations with potential customers, our technology is always a hook immediately in terms of its capabilities and its innovativeness. But the next thing that often where the conversation would die would be based on our scale and capability to deliver. So I definitely think early on, we should have invested more time in building out that part of our business. Some other early challenges that I wish we could have done differently are really just in hindsight. We pursued paths for our technology that were driven more by some of the inventors and scientists' interest and excitement about capabilities and weren't married up to the real market potential and interest. And again, that ties into another early point I made earlier about taking a technology from the academic lab and bringing it out, is just having a better awareness of what the market potentials were for specific applications and what the future of those markets could look like. Specific example is we pursued the development of our technology for a targeted application. This was actually a test for Lyme disease that we were working on directly ourselves. And the market conditions changed in the middle of our development process after we had invested a significant amount of funding in it. And we fortunately made the decision to pivot and to cut our losses on that particular application of it and move into another area of focus for our technology. Of course, if we could have done that sooner, we would have, but those are some things you have to move on from.
Can you talk a little bit about the opportunity your company has had to contribute to the fight against COVID-19?
Certainly, yeah. So first of all, it's a great example of how our business model is playing out, that we developed a particle technology that has broad utility and can be deployed to a number of applications for diagnostic testing. As it relates to COVID, we have invested a significant amount of our time in the research and development of our technology to capture viruses. COVID was not on our radar. We actually were looking at other coronaviruses. We were working with influenza and many other infectious diseases. But we were pursuing this path because we felt that some of the current gold standard technologies being used to process samples and capture viruses for downstream diagnostic assays had many deficiencies in performance. Really, the technologies had not been updated for a long time. And some of these deficiencies, were leading to slower testing, more expensive testing, and notably just less accurate testing, which is critical in diagnostic testing, especially for diseases like COVID. Missing a positive or infected individual can have massive consequences. So when the pandemic struck, we were ready to apply our technology to it. And we had some initial funding to validate that it would work with COVID. And it proved to be a very powerful solution. And we have now generated a significant amount of interest and many customers from large testing labs, from other test manufacturers and end users who are all looking for better ways to perform COVID testing, whatever the method of testing that they are employing. This summer, we were awarded $6.5 million of funding from the NIH through their RADx program. And this is to scale our technology from enabling thousands of tests per month to enabling tens of millions of tests per month. So right now, we're in the midst of a major growth phase that is being driven entirely by the need for new technologies to support COVID testing.
Do you have any advice for entrepreneurs that are just getting started?
Yeah, so as you can pick up from the rest of the podcast and sharing my experience in building out this company and some of the lessons we learned along the way. Underpinning all of that was a piece of advice that I can offer, which is to develop a very robust and informed business plan, one that is guided by customer needs and market conditions and potential future market conditions, which I know you can't always predict, but trying to anticipate what those might be. Spending the money up front for plenty of third-party validation of both the technology and this business plan, and being sure to not get too caught up in the excitement that the inventors, or I guess the founding inventors, have about their technology. So often there's a thought that, build it and they will come, but it's not practical, and you have to be very pragmatic about the costs and benefit of building a business around an idea or technology. And, as we've learned, you need to be prepared on several occasions. There's not going to be just one big one and, then you move on. But on many occasions through a startup company's life, you need to be prepared to cut losses and redirect and understand that failure is the only thing that's normal about a startup technology business, is that you will have many failures. And so you need to understand that that's okay, and that's actually to be expected, and you have to move forward from those and find the opportunities that come out of those, and be patient, and eventually you'll identify the real opportunity. Another piece of advice is knowing when to, put the blinders on. There's a ton of noise out there in every area of technology development. The news always reports on the latest shiny object, and there are times when you see news of other technologies, or investors will come to you and say, were you aware of this company? It looks like they're doing what you're doing. And there's always the fear of another technology posing an existential threat to your business. So I think as a founder, you need to put everything into perspective and really focus on your business plan, your technology. Trust that you have something of real value, independent of what anyone else is doing. Because if you let all of the noise get to you, you will lose sleep chasing what others are doing and comparing yourselves to others. Of course, you need to be aware of all that, but also you do need to learn how to drown out some of that noise.
I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I really thank you for sharing your experience. And for those of you listening, if you are interested in getting involved in the Nanotechnology Entrepreneurship Network, please go to nano.gov/Nano Entrepreneurship Network or email us at nen@nnco.nano.gov.